The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. Picture a 13-year-old girl named Clarissa. She's sprawled in her room with a clarinet, wearing a blue hoodie and looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. According to everyone who knows her, teacher, parents, even Clarissa herself, she's spectacularly average at music. Her rhythm? Nothing special. Her motivation? Barely there. She's just a kid. But then something remarkable happens. A researcher hits record, and for the next 5 minutes and 54 seconds, we witness something that looks absolutely unremarkable, but is actually revolutionary. Clarissa tackles a new jazz piece. She plays a few notes, stops, squints at the sheet music like it personally offended her. Plays again, botches a note, yanks the clarinet from her lips. She hums the part quietly, starts over, gets slightly further, messes up again, rewinds, fixes it. To anyone watching, it looks like a train wreck. The music stumbles and sputters, peppered with stops and starts. It's definitely not a performance. It's more like watching someone assemble flat-pack furniture without instructions. But here's the kicker. The music psychologist watching this tape is practically bouncing with excitement. This is incredible, they say. Because in those 6 minutes of seemingly failed attempts, this perfectly ordinary kid just turbocharged her learning by 10 times. She squeezed a month's worth of improvement into the time it takes to brew a cup of coffee. How on earth is that possible? Here's where it gets really interesting. What if I told you that Clarissa's messy practice session holds the same secret as a grimy tennis club in Moscow that somehow churns out more top-ranked female players than the entire United States? And it's the exact same secret that powered Renaissance artists and Brazil's legendary soccer players? This isn't some story about blessed genetics or magical inborn gifts. This is about a hidden code, a universal mechanism in our brains that lets us build abilities from scratch. And anyone can crack this code. Today, we're diving into The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. This book became a phenomenon, selling hundreds of thousands of copies because it tackles one of humanity's most burning questions. Where does greatness actually come from? Coyle, a sharp investigative journalist, spent years exploring the world's most unlikely breeding grounds of excellence, places he calls talent hotbeds, to decode this mystery. By the time we're done here, you'll understand it too. You'll see that greatness isn't something you inherit at birth. It's something you cultivate. And you'll walk away with an actual blueprint for growing it yourself. Every story of exceptional talent seems to follow the same tired script. We see a brilliant musician, a jaw-dropping athlete, or a genius artist, and we immediately assume they were born different. We watch their smooth, effortless performance and think, yeah, I could never do that. It feels like witnessing actual magic. But Daniel Coyle rips away the curtain on this supposed magic trick and shows us the machinery humming behind the scenes. And this machine runs on 3 simple but powerful components: deep practice, ignition, and master coaching. Together they form the talent code. Let's start with the first and possibly most mind-bending piece: deep practice. Remember Clarissa, our clarinet player? Her practice was slow, clunky, and littered with mistakes. Common sense screams that this is a terrible way to learn. We think smooth, effortless performance should be the goal from day one, but Coyle reveals a stunning paradox. Struggling in a specific, targeted way is actually the most effective path to learning. This isn't just some feel-good psychology, it's a biological necessity. To understand why, we need to peek inside our brains. Every human skill, whether it's smacking a baseball, nailing a guitar chord, or cracking a calculus problem, is built on a neural circuit. Think of it like a pathway of nerve fibers carrying electrical signals. When you perform an action, a specific circuit lights up. Now here's where it gets cool. Our brains contain a substance called myelin. Myelin is this fatty tissue that wraps around nerve circuits like insulation. The more you fire a particular circuit, the more layers of myelin coil around it. And just like rubber coating on a copper wire, myelin makes the signal traveling down that nerve fiber stronger, faster, and cleaner. The thicker the myelin, the better you are at that skill. So skill isn't some fuzzy, abstract quality. It's physical. Skill is myelin. And the best way to grow it is through deep practice. Deep practice happens when you're operating right at the edge of your abilities. You're not mindlessly repeating something you've already mastered. You're reaching for something just beyond your grasp, which forces you to slow down, stumble, and correct yourself. Each time you mess up, adjust, and try again, you're firing that specific circuit and sending a signal to your brain, hey, this circuit matters. Wrap more myelin around it. Coyle gives us a brilliant example of this in action. He traveled to Brazil expecting to find the secret to their soccer dominance on beautiful grass fields. Instead, he found something completely different. It's called futsal, or soccer in a phone booth. It's played on a hard surface, about the size of a basketball court, with a smaller, heavier ball that barely bounces. The game is lightning fast and incredibly tight. With so little space, you can't just boot the ball downfield and chase it. You need insane ball control, pinpoint passing, and split-second decision-making. Here's the gold. A university study discovered that futsal players touch the ball 600% more per minute than players in traditional soccer. Futsal is basically a deep practice factory. It compresses all the essential soccer skills into a tiny box, forcing players to constantly fire their skill circuits, solve problems, make mistakes, and adapt. They're layering on myelin at warp speed without even realizing it. When they finally step onto a full-sized field, it feels like they have all the time and space in the world. This same principle explains the Bronte sisters, Charlotte, Emily, and Anne, who became literary giants. They grew up in a remote village, and as kids they didn't exactly scream future novelists. Actually, their early writing was pretty rough. They created these tiny, handwritten books filled with stories that were mostly just knockoffs of the adventure and romance novels they'd read. They copied characters, mimicked famous authors, and made heaps of spelling and grammar mistakes. But here's the secret sauce. Those little books were their personal futsal court. In the safe, low-stakes universe of their imaginary kingdoms, they practiced storytelling for thousands upon thousands of hours. They were firing their narrative circuits, learning about character development, plot structure, and pacing. They were building the myelin foundation for masterpieces like Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights. Their early clumsy attempts weren't evidence of missing genius. They were the actual process that created it. So the first rule of the talent code is simple. Embrace the struggle. Deep practice isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to be imperfect, to hang out in that sweet spot just beyond your current abilities, where you stumble and correct. Because every mistake, when you actually pay attention to it, signals your brain to build another layer of myelin. And those layers, over time, add up to mastery. But this raises a critical question. Deep practice is exhausting. It demands massive amounts of energy, passion, and grit. Where does that motivation come from? If deep practice is the engine that builds skill, what's the fuel that makes the engine roar? This brings us to the second element of the talent code, ignition. Ignition is that spark, that sudden, almost magical burst of motivation that makes you think, That's who I want to be. It's not a rational, calculated decision. It's a primal signal that connects with our deepest desires for identity and belonging, flooding our system with the energy needed for the grueling work of deep practice. Coyle shares a stunning story about South Korean women in professional golf. Before 1998, there were virtually zero South Korean women on the LPGA Tour. Then, a 20-year-old named Se-ri Pak won a major championship. Overnight, she became a national hero. Suddenly, tens of thousands of young girls across South Korea saw someone who looked like them, who came from the same world, dominating on the global stage. The message was simple and explosive. If she can do it, why can't I? 10 years later, 45 South Korean women were on the LPGA Tour, absolutely dominating the sport. Nothing had changed about their genetics or training facilities. What changed was a signal. A switch flipped. An entire generation ignited. The same thing happened after Roger Bannister became the first person to run a mile in under 4 minutes in 1954. For decades, the 4-minute mile was considered an unbreakable barrier, like it was written into human biology. But once Bannister did it, the mental barrier shattered. Just weeks later, another runner broke it. Within 3 years, 17 more runners had done it. The impossible had become routine. These are what Coyle calls primal cues. Simple, powerful signals that tap into our unconscious motivational wiring. And one of the most powerful primal cues is the concept of future belonging. We're social creatures, hardwired to connect with groups. When we see a group or individual we admire and identify with, our brain releases a flood of energy toward becoming like them. One of the most fascinating studies Coyle highlights was done by music psychologist Gary McPherson. He asked a group of kids, before they'd ever taken their first music lesson, a simple question: how long do you think you'll play your instrument? Their answers fell into 3 categories: short-term, medium-term, and long-term commitment. The results were absolutely wild. The kids who, for whatever reason, saw themselves as long-term musicians, who'd already formed an identity around it, demolished everyone else by a massive margin. With the exact same amount of practice, the long-term group improved 400% more than the short-term group. In fact, a long-term kid practicing just 20 minutes a week progressed faster than a short-term kid practicing for an hour and a half. Their success wasn't determined by natural musical talent. It was determined by a tiny, powerful idea they held before they even started. I am a musician. That idea became the fuel, the ignition, for all the deep practice that followed. And this ignition can be deliberately engineered. Coyle takes us inside a network of inner-city schools called KIP, the Knowledge is Power program. These schools take students from low-income neighborhoods, who are often years behind academically, and put them on a path to college. Over 80% of KIP students end up attending college, which is a staggering success rate. How do they pull this off? They create an environment of total ignition. From day one, everything at KIP broadcasts a single, powerful message: you are going to college. Students are addressed by the year they'll graduate from college, the class of 2030. Classrooms are named after universities. They take field trips to visit college campuses. The word college gets repeated hundreds of times a day, not as some distant fantasy, but as a concrete identity. KIP creates a new sense of belonging. The message is clear: people like us work hard, people like us are kind, people like us go to college. This powerful sense of identity provides the motivational fuel for the incredibly hard work and deep practice the students tackle every single day. KIP proves you don't have to wait for a lightning bolt of inspiration like Se-ri Pak. You can build a world rich with the signals that spark passion and effort. So we have the method, deep practice, and we have the fuel, ignition. But there's one more crucial piece to the puzzle. Who helps us navigate this challenging journey? Who guides us into the sweet spot of deep practice and keeps the fires of ignition burning? This is the third and final element of the talent code, master coaching. When we imagine a great coach, we often picture a charismatic leader delivering rousing speeches, like a general rallying troops before battle. But when Coyle visited the talent hotbeds, he discovered that the world's best coaches were the complete opposite. They were quiet, observant, and almost allergic to motivational speeches. Many were older, with decades of experience. They were what Coyle calls talent whisperers. Their magic wasn't in grand oratory, but in delivering short, targeted, razor-sharp pieces of information, precisely when a student needed it most. They were like human GPS systems for building skill. Coyle introduces us to John Wooden, the legendary UCLA basketball coach who won 10 national championships. Researchers who studied Wooden's practices were shocked by their findings. Wooden almost never gave praise. He rarely showed displeasure. Instead, 75% of his communication was pure, unfiltered information. He'd deliver quick, 3-second demonstrations. This is the right way. This is the wrong way. Do it the right way. His words came like a rapid-fire stream of targeted corrections, each one helping a player refine a specific neural circuit. He was a master of guiding deep practice. Another master coach, cello teacher Hans Jensen, seems to have some kind of supernatural intuition with his students. In a single lesson, Coyle watched him completely transform his approach. With one advanced student who was technically flawless but emotionally flat, Jensen became a wild, energetic conductor shouting, "Now! There is only now! You gotta go like a turbine!" But with the very next student who was struggling and anxious, he morphed into a calm, gentle sage. He leaned in and whispered, "You must think it. Sink the whole piece in your mind. That is the vitamin." Great coaches don't dish out one-size-fits-all advice. Their real genius lies in their ability to instantly diagnose a student's specific needs and deliver the exact signal that will help them grow. They possess what Coyle calls a matrix, a vast, deep knowledge of their craft, built over years of their own deep practice. This matrix allows them to spot the subtle stumbles of a student reaching for mastery and connect with them using the perfect, targeted message. But there's another type of master coach that's equally important, especially at the very beginning of a learning journey. Researcher Benjamin Bloom studied the first teachers of world-class pianists, swimmers, and tennis players. He discovered something surprising. Most didn't start with elite, highly technical coaches. They started with local neighborhood teachers described as warm, patient, and wonderful with kids. These first teachers weren't masters of technique. They were masters of ignition. Their primary job wasn't to build perfect skill circuits. It was to make the child fall head over heels in love with the activity. They transformed practice into play. They created a warm, encouraging space where the child became captivated and hooked. They weren't coaching the skill. They were coaching passion. So master coaching isn't one thing, it's two. At the beginning of a journey, we need a coach who can ignite our love for something. Then, as we advance, we need a coach who can guide our deep practice with precision and wisdom. When you combine these three elements, the targeted struggle of deep practice, the motivational fire of ignition, and the expert guidance of master coaching, you get the code for building talent. It's a feedback loop. Ignition provides the energy for deep practice. Deep practice builds the skill circuits, layer by layer. And a master coach orchestrates the whole process, keeping the energy flowing and the practice focused. The talent code completely flips our understanding of ability. It shows us that talent isn't a fixed genetic lottery ticket. It's a process. It's a muscle that can be developed. We're all born with the machinery to become great at something. The secret is knowing how to activate it and how to make it flourish. Greatness isn't born. It's grown. And now you know exactly how. As we wrap up our journey through the talent code, I want to reflect on why this book matters so much, especially right now. The single most transformative idea Daniel Coyle offers us is hope. He demolishes the myth of natural talent, that toxic belief that some people just have it and the rest of us are out of luck. How many times have you tried something new, struggled, and thought, I guess I'm just not cut out for this? That thought is a door slamming shut on your potential. The talent code hands you the key to unlock that door. It reframes struggle not as a sign of inadequacy, but as the very path to strength. That feeling of frustration, of reaching and falling short, that's not failure. That's the sensation of myelin being built. That's the feeling of actual growth. Understanding this on a biological level changes everything. It gives you permission to be a beginner, to be awkward, to mess up. It transforms every challenge into an opportunity. This book also gives us fresh eyes to view the world. You start spotting the talent code everywhere. You see it in how a master chef trains an apprentice, in how a great company nurtures innovation, and even in how a toddler learns to walk, wobbling, falling, getting back up, building myelin with every unsteady step. So how can you apply this in your own life, starting today? Let me offer 3 concrete actions. First, find your sweet spot. Whatever you want to improve at, a sport, an instrument, an academic subject, even public speaking, don't just go through the motions. Identify the specific skills that are just beyond your current reach. Break them into the smallest possible pieces, slow them down, and work on them with intense focus. Embrace the mistakes, because that's where the real learning happens. Ask yourself, what's the smallest, hardest thing I can do right now to improve? Second, engineer your own ignition. Motivation isn't something you wait around for. It's something you create. Surround yourself with signals that reinforce your identity. If you want to be a writer, join a community of writers. Read work by authors you admire. Stick a photo of your favorite author on your desk. These aren't silly little tricks. They're powerful primal cues that tell your unconscious mind, this is who we are. This is what we do. Your environment shapes your identity, so become the architect of your environment. And third, praise the effort, not the ability. This is critical, whether you're talking to yourself or others. The research of Carol Dweck, which Coyle highlights, is crystal clear on this. When you say, I'm naturally smart at this, you create a fear of failure. But when you say, I worked really hard at this, you create a hunger for challenges. Celebrate the struggle. Acknowledge the persistence. Because effort isn't just a means to an end. It's the engine of growth itself. That was a summary of The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. We've covered the core ideas today, but I need to be honest. A summary is like looking at a postcard of the Grand Canyon. It gives you the general idea, but it can't capture the awe of standing on the edge yourself. The real magic of this book lives in the stories, the scientific nuances, and the way Coyle weaves it all together. This summary is designed to help you decide if this book deserves your time. If anything we've discussed today has sparked your curiosity or opened your eyes to what's possible, I strongly encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it is an experience that can genuinely transform how you see your own potential. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to ensure you don't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep growing together.